Welcome to the latest episode of TikTok Famous Podcast. Today we're talking with Jessica Anderson, known on TikTok as Jess Anderson for Virginia, Crazy Mother Runner. She's not just a fierce voice online, she's running for the Virginia House of Delegates in the 71st District this November. Jessica shows how her raw, relatable TikToks about motherhood, mental health, and fighting for what matters led her to take on the political machine. So stay with us as we talk to Jess Anderson.
Hello.
You're listening to the TikTok Famous Podcast, where viral fame meets raw reality. Join your host, Meredith Willits, as she dives deep with your favorite creators to uncover the real stories behind the scroll, the highs, the lows, the algorithm chaos, and everything in between. This is not your average interview. This is the TikTok Famous Podcast.
Sorry for that. I pushed the button and it didn't want to push. It was like, I didn't want to go. I want to talk to Jess now.
That's hilarious.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So before we hit go live and all that good stuff, I was telling you, I've been following you since the beginning because you are this amazing woman who's like running with purple hair and a mom and politically loud. But
Yes.
that has changed to you actually running for office. Like you're literally running for Virginia. Please tell us all about it because so many people run their mouths on social media, I being one of them, but you're actually doing it.
Yeah. So this is actually my second time doing it, which is
Mhm.
crazy. So obviously I ran back in 2023. Truly ran like by all definitions, a grassroots campaign. Had a very skeleton crew of two regular employees that were on my team that just believed in me as a candidate and a person and a human. And then fully supported by my family, thank God, because this is not something you can do without a support system in your house. And then, I had one of the least funded budgets as a competitive district goes, even though by a lot of metrics, a lot of people on the outside didn't see me as a competitive seat. We averaged, just to be like a concept, we averaged about $12 and some change per vote. The next cheapest competitive race spent about $75 per vote. The most expensive was $276 per vote.
Wow.
But we had the fourth highest turnout in the state of the 100 delegate races, and we missed third by less than 10 votes. So not only were we inexpensive, but we were efficient with our dollars. I think running for office, you have to like you said, if you're going to talk the talk, walk the walk. And it was the voter outreach and the conversations with voters at the doors, at local community events, at events that we were hosting, whether it be a meet and greet or a local fundraiser, or a town hall, which I just had my first official town hall this past week. So just
Congrats.
opportunities, thank you, to put people in the room that may or may not agree with me and to have some difficult conversations. As we both know, being online, it's super easy for people to say the most heinous thing to you
Yeah.
because they're not in your face. They're not talking to you eye to eye. And they are quite literally keyboard warriors and they can say what they want without accountability. You don't have that same reaction when we're talking about people that live in your community, that are in your face, that you're at their door saying, hey, I'm introducing myself to possibly represent you. What do you want from me? And so I think that really changes the dynamic of the conversation. It's no longer it's a debate, it's a dialogue. So I'm really grateful I get to do this. It's something that I never imagined myself doing. I did not grow up political. I did not grow up having conversations about any of these things. That was just not, it was very taboo in my house growing up. And then I actually got married super young. I got married at age 20. I couldn't even drink
Oh,
at my own
wow.
wedding. And I married into a very conservative Christian household that had very, right wing political ideologies. One thing that I was never moved on was the pro-choice conversation. I had an abortion. I've been very public about that, and I had it at 18. And I felt like there's one thing that politicians don't belong, and that's in my healthcare decisions. Um, and that just doesn't apply to reproductive rights across the board. Like there is a reason that doctors are doctors and
Yeah.
politicians are politicians, and so that was one thing that we didn't talk about in that during that 13-year marriage, especially with my extended family there. But I did
Did your
have.
husband know that you had had abortion though?
Yeah, actually, no. My ex-husband, actually
Oh, your
met
ex, sorry.
me. Yeah, no, it's okay. He actually met me prior to me having it, and was actually a support system when I went through the decision. It wasn't his.
Hmm.
It was my high school sweetheart, but it was the fact that I think a lot of our bonding came from actually that experience. And then
And
I
as we
always
would
tell
know from
people
TikTok, that's trauma bonding.
it was trauma bonding, and it's also, and I talk about this a lot now too. There was a stigma. There's still a stigma around
Of course.
making that decision. And honestly, that stigma, I don't regret that decision. That decision led me in a different path. I went on to have three healthy, beautiful girls that, I get to, watch grow up and be incredible, strong, loudmouth women as well. But, it's the fact that, we make decisions in our life, and sometimes other people don't understand them or agree with them, but the right decisions for us and our
Yeah.
path. And I think that there was a stigma though, because even in that time when I knew it was the right decision, I'd had conversations with my family, my parents, my significant other at the time. Like, it wasn't a decision I made really on my own. I had a lot of input to know, you know, do I have a support system? And am I going to be able to live my life and move forward? And I knew that the people I cared about said no, like, we're not
Wow.
prepared to support you in that way. And this is going to be, fall on you. And I mean, I was 18, I was in college, like, it just wasn't something that I saw myself becoming a mom. And, but again, I, met my then ex, in that process and in that time frame, and he was very supportive. But it's funny because I married into this family that would have literally, just condemned my actions. But I did have some right-leaning perspectives over the years being in that kind of bubble, shall we say.
Yeah.
I grew up with people that were, by every definition, like-minded. Um, so I had voted both sides of the political fence. It's funny because it was, if a politician was everly publicly pro-life, I never would vote for them. Like, that was the one, like, that was my red line in the sand. Like, no, you're not
Yeah.
getting my vote. But I mean, I was listed even in our Virginia database up until I think 2 years ago when I participated in my second Democratic primary, that I was listed as an independent because I had voted so balanced on both sides of the ticket over the
Yeah.
years. So it was kind of funny to see that and be like, I'm the Democratic candidate, but I'm currently listed as an independent in this stupid database. Um, but yeah, so obviously, I had three children, went through a really challenging divorce, had some separation with my like church, and just a lot of kind of, shall we say, come to Jesus moments, and found myself navigating social safety nets, and really having to, for the first time, ask for help. And that was a really hard concept for me. Got Medicaid for myself and my three young daughters. I found out we didn't have health insurance any longer throughout the divorce process.
Yep.
Also, it was approved for EBT, food stamps, for $650 a month, which was great because I was really struggling at that time trying to re-enter the workforce because I'd been a stay-at-home mom for a couple years, all of these
Oh, I've made a
things.
few videos on that topic.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it was definitely new to me, but I got a job back in a dental practice. I had done billing and insurance for 7 years before that. I went back to my old practice, and after a year, I got a pay increase. And I'm like, awesome. Like, I'm improving my situation. It was a $5,000 pay raise. Found out I no longer qualified for the EBT. Lost it. So $7,000 a year of non-taxable food money got exchanged for $5,000 of taxable income. So really eye-opening moment in my life to say, like, these systems are not built to help us. They are not built to help us elevate and get out of a difficult or, low income situation, which was where
Yeah.
I was at as a single mom of three. And I was really disheartened at the reality of that situation. So fast forward, I met and married my current husband through the running community. I am a runner, as you said. I literally have a runner as my I in my name on all my advertisements. But we've been married now 8 years this year, this September. But a year after we got married, I had the opportunity to work in my younger two daughters' public school, elementary school, and yet again, like, this other personal lived experience where I was seen behind the curtain, how underfunded and underappreciated our educators and staff were, the disparities that existed in a community that, by every standard from the outside looking in, looked very wealthy, very, very elitist. And there was a massive number of those that were unhoused, that were living in subsidized federal housing, affordable housing and through the federal government, living in hotels and motels on top of each other, very transient. We have a huge English learner language community as well that reside in my district. So all of these things I'm kind of getting exposure to and realizing like leadership doesn't know these people exist. People in the community are not really acknowledging these people's existence and the need that's there. Um, and so again, it made me a little more engaged locally. When COVID hit, I obviously got very active online and started engaging more with political content creators like myself that I became eventually, and really kind of educating myself, getting access to a lot of marginalized and minority communities that I didn't have access to in my own personal life, and got to hear their stories and get a little insight on like their experiences, their lived experiences, which is really helpful for me, an education piece for me that I needed in my life.
Yeah.
And then when COVID did happen, um, and then January 6th happened, I made my first politically charged video on TikTok, and kind of, the rest is history. And the next 4.5, 5 years, I've been incredibly active online. But also I became incredibly active in my community, getting people to go to school board meetings and trying to kind of drown out the loud minorities that were, in the room, but not representing the community in a real way. And
Yeah.
connected with our local Democratic committee back in 2020 too, and kind of said, hey, like, I really feel driven to do more. I feel like, and these are my passions, K through 12, early childhood education, obviously the reproductive rights conversation with Roe v. Wade and everything going on with that at the time, healthcare, making it affordable and accessible across the board, the housing concerns, affordability, et cetera. And she's like, oh, well, you sound like you should be in the state house. Like, this is where you could do the most good. And I was like, okay, sign me up.
Okay.
So September 2022, almost immediately after our conversation, I went online and I did the online paperwork. And then January of that following year, I got my petitions and I hit the ground running,
I
and ran that
remember
first
that.
campaign. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
amazing.
It's great. Like, I mean, there's so many people on social media, like I said, that just talk and talk and talk. And it's so amazing that you took the extra step and actually went for it. So when you go back to that moment, what switched for you where you said, yes, I'm going to actually, was it that woman? Was it like, okay, I can actually do this? Someone believes in me? Was it that one person mirroring you in that moment that said, yeah, you're the perfect person? Did it just take that?
I think it was a combination of things. So I had almost thought about running for Congress the year prior, and I even like went online and went the extra mile, and like did the paperwork just like kind of for shits and giggles, quite honestly.
Right,
Um,
right.
and and then I get this call. I remember looking at my husband, like I get a call, and they're like, "Hey, I noticed that you registered to run for Congress in CD1," and I'm like, yeah, I don't really know what I was thinking. And like, well, the reality is if you get 1,000 signatures, like you're on the ballot. And I'm like, oh
Wow.
shit, okay. The
I love it.
simplicity of it all. So I initially had made an announcement and it was really tough. And I think it was one of those things like I didn't consult enough people kind of in that space at the time. And I was just like, I want to be in the room. I don't want to be where the decisions are made. Um, and unfortunately, it did not pan out because I got a couple threats. And ironically, when I got the threats, my husband was actually out of town. He was not in the area. And I'm kind of spiraling. I'm at home. I'm panicking. And then I'm thinking about like, oh my gosh, like if I actually win, what does that look like for my family? I still have relatively young kids at home. This is 32 weeks of my life dedicated to being in DC. And I've got these people that are already giving me actively death threats. Like, what does that look like for my family on a larger scale? Like, so I'm basically kind of having a like spiraling panic attack in this
Yeah.
moment. And I immediately pick my phone and I'm like, okay, I'm so sorry. I can't do this. Like, this wasn't the right decision. It was a rush decision. And I raised $50,000 in a week in that moment.
What?
Yes. So that was even
Wow.
more like hard for me because I was like, all these people believe in me and I'm letting them down. And that was like, I think that was the hardest part of that moment that I had made a very quick decision. I didn't really take the moment to understand where I'd make the most impact,
Yeah.
and really consult with other people that would, could chime in and say, hey, like, is this the right path for you? Is this really like what you want to do in this moment? And that's not to say that Congress isn't on my horizon. I definitely see that as a future for me. But like, again, I'm glad that I did come into the space of people that have been in this world and understand the politics of it, let's be honest, and were
Yeah.
able to kind of direct me into a position in elected office that's going to be a better role and a better fit for me, and where I can really speak incredibly passionate and intellectually to the policies that mean the most to me. And
Yeah.
so,
What was it
so
like
that
though,
was
like when you look back, because social media, I was actually just talking to on episode 1, Garza Girl, and she had she made a comment. That's all it took. And a whole campaign against her, 48 hours. A person even made a website going after her. So social media, I mean, it kind of does get your skin pretty thick to be able to
yeah.
deal with haters and trolls and death threats and all of those things. Do you think that one has prepared you for another, or was that a whole different ball of wax when you're going in and getting threats within the first, few moments of running for Congress? And do you know where and why and who those death threats came from?
So one was like really hard to pin down. It did appear that they were a Virginia resident, so obviously that makes me a little anxious. The other one I did know, unfortunately,
What?
and yeah, and actually had kind of a parasocial relationship on social media with,
Wow.
and her threat wasn't necessarily an unalive threat. It was more of a like, I know your children's last name, I know your like. It was kind of like very very direct, pointed, like,
Menacing.
yes, like, I know this stuff. And so that was concerning because I was never public about my children's last name because obviously I am divorced, so we have different names.
Yeah.
So that really put some fear to me because now we're talking about my children, you know. So I will say for my own personal, like, the threats and things and mean words on the internet, I've never really been bothered by that. And I do think the internet does creates an environment where you have to build a thick skin and
Yeah.
be very prepared for anything and everything. I'm always someone that, like, when I did have those issues, I filed a police report. I made sure that there was a record because I'm smart enough to know that a record gives you some leeway if things continue to escalate and all those things. So, I say that to anybody that's going to put themselves in a very public role, whether it's on social media or whether it's running for office, both of these things in this political climate can invoke hate and anger and threats. Don't poo-poo things away. Like, make sure there's a record of it. Make sure that
Yeah.
you're kind of, ensuring that you're keeping track of those things, because again, if they escalate, you want to know that you can go back and say, this is where it started. I have a legal pathway to address it.
Yeah.
But I do think it prepared me to run. I mean, obviously, when you run, there's a lot of mudslinging. My opponent, it's funny, like, I only focused when I ran against her in 2023, I focused on her policy. I mean, she has a voting record that I could run on. She was in office for 2 terms, 4 years, and she had an abysmal voting record, voted against ERA, voted against funding almost across the board for K through 12, pushed for a school voucher program to funnel public funds into private institutions, has voted against every common sense gun reform that's come down the pipeline, voted against contraception protection in this past General Assembly. Like, she has continuously made bad votes that by and large are not supported by the majority of Virginians, and now a majority of my district.
Yeah.
So I didn't need to talk about her character. I don't know her. Like, I don't know her as a person. I don't
Yeah.
need to talk about your personal life or the way, any of those things. But she was taking images of me from 2020 or 2022 when I did, like you pointed out, I had like purple streaks in my hair at one point.
Which
Like,
are fabulous, by the way.
yeah,
So keep
it
being
was
you.
COVID. It was COVID. Me and my kids were at home. I wasn't working in a public eye. So, like, I got to do fun things like that with them. Like,
Yep.
all of us did that. And
Yep.
so she took screen grabs of videos that I made when I was like running, not even political content back then, and then posted them on mailers and sent them. So people, when I met them at their door, literally like, oh, I thought you had purple hair. And I'm like, no.
People evolve.
And I was like, that was something that me and my kids had done
Yep.
during the COVID timeline. It was fun. It was like something
And
to
not that
do
there's
to
anything
find
wrong with it.
fun.
If you have purple hair
No,
out there, if you have
I
pink
love people
hair,
with purple hair.
yes, run for office, please. We need
Right.
you.
We have some great people with some great colored hair that are running for office in Virginia this year, I'm just gonna say. But, like,
There you
I thought it
go.
was fun, I've also had, like, the blonde streaks, like, and I'm not doing it right now because it's destroyed my hair, unfortunately, and made it really weird
Yeah.
textured. But it was just so funny to see her, like, it
Yeah.
was their way of, like, radical leftists, and I'm like, No, I'm, like, literally just an everyday mom, working class woman, living in this community, and so I leaned into that. Like, this has been my home. I worked in Williamsburg, which is part of my district, since I was 14 years old. I'll be 44 this year. Like, I have worked
Wow.
in this community for 30 years almost.
Yeah.
My first job was at Busch Gardens, like every other 90s kid growing up in this area.
I love
And, I've lived
it.
here for 25 plus years. I've raised my family here. My kids have all gone through and are continuing to go through our public school system, both in New Kent and in the other district that I live in now, which is WJCC. Like, this is my home. And so I'm not running to, like, have this title. It's definitely not for money. We make just over $17,000 a year as elected
Get
officials because
out.
it's a
Wow.
part-time assembly. This is me wanting to truly represent the people that I care about and that I consider my community and my friends and my family, et cetera. And so I think that was recognized across the board. And I also point to the fact that I have lived here so long. So I worked for a very well-known family-owned dentist practice for 10 years. I work in the front office of one of our 13 or 16 public schools in the division. I am a swim mom. I was a cross country mom and track and field mom. I coached a run club for our elementary students, both here and in the other district adjacent in New Kent. Like, people know me with all these different hats,
Yeah.
and they don't see me as, like, political or Democrat Jessica Anderson. They see me as Jess. Like,
Yep.
she's one of the fellow moms. She's one of she's one of the front office ladies that helps me get my kid or helps me deal with issues that I'm having at the school or, whatever. And so that personal touch of me being a real authentic person that actually lives, breathes, and exists in this community adds a value to my candidacy that I don't think you can't buy.
Yeah. And I
You
think
can't
so
buy.
many I think so many candidates have so much money, right? And it puts them in position to, like, okay, you have all this money. So now what do I do? I run for office. Like, what do I do next? Right? Like, look at the president. He had a lot of money. What do I do next? I don't know. Run for office. Why not? Right? Elon Musk, same. And so but the problem with those situations are, unlike yourself, who has touched the hot stove, who understands the need for assistance, who understands the need for good schools and childcare and the you made more money, but now we're going to take away your food stamp. So good luck. You touch the hot stove. You understand what it feels like. You got close. You understand what it means to be a stay-at-home mom and have to start and rebuild all over from scratch years later. Like I talk about the trad wife. Like, make sure you have a side hustle. Make sure you have a resume, because at the end of being a trad wife or a traditional stay-at-home wife, you've got no IRA, no 401k, no work history. Good luck, ladies who are listening. So you've touched the stove, you get it. You know what your constituents are literally going through. And what
Mhm.
happens when we take those programs away, we have women who are having their boyfriends watch their kids because they can't afford daycare. They're not able to work a job. They are leaving the kids home alone who really shouldn't be left alone. They, are not taking I know I have a friend who is on SSI, and he cannot get a quote real job because if he does, he'll lose all of his SSI, and his SSI for medical. He could never find
Mm.
what he needs because of the medical situation that he's in. And so he has to work everything under the table. Like, these systems, like you said, keep people broke. I think that we need to go back to, and I know you'll agree with me, people that are from the community, who have touched the hot stove, who understand what it feels like, who understand the needs of actual real people and are not silver spooners who have absolutely nothing to do with their life next. So run for office. I think we need to go back to the way that our founding fathers, good, bad, or ugly, really intended for the people to be represented. So in that breath, and how politics goes, do you think that we need to look at things like term limits? Because eventually it kind of does the power maybe go to your head? Do you get too in bed with these PACs and these people that are intertwined so tightly with politics? Do you believe that we need term limits across the board?
So I definitely think there needs to be some type of term limits in place. It's a question of what do the term limits look like? Because there is a benefit to that institutional knowledge, and I do know that part too. Like,
Yeah.
for perfect example is, we have people that are in leadership that have been in leadership forever, and they've long since been eligible and more than capable of passing the torch to some of the younger people that have also done their time and have proven that they are, have their worth. Of course, my mind immediately goes to the likes of like Jasmine Crockett or AOC, who has been very loud, outspoken, bold individuals within their congressional body. And they have been overlooked for certain leadership roles. And that's unfortunate because of the fact that this is an opportunity, again, to recognize their strengths and pass the torch on because they have the institutional knowledge. They've been in this role and they know it. I do think that, I look at my General Assembly at the state level, and last election cycle, we had some of the highest turnover for new delegates that entered the scene and senators, but specifically delegates. And with that, like, it's great, new blood, fresh blood, which I definitely want to see because we want some new ideas coming in. There's also this level that you do lose a little institutional knowledge in that passing. I know in the Senate side, they lost two senators that had been there for a very long time. One retired and then one lost his reelection. But these are two individuals that actually had incredible abilities to work across the table. They were legitimately willing to have, dialogue with their opposing party on the other side. In fact, the people I'm talking about, one is a Republican, one's a Democrat, and both of them were very well liked across political lines because they were doing the work. And Virginia is very different than the Congress. This is a different, kind of sphere, but it's the fact that when they left, one because of choosing and one because of losing, that institutional knowledge also went out the door. And
Yeah.
so there is a piece there that we need to find a balance. I think that there's a certain amount of time, like when you have reached a certain point in your thing, like know when to say goodbye and
Yeah.
walk away from that role. You did the good work. Move on, or by your
Yeah.
definition, your good work, because obviously there's people in there that also have leadership that I don't think are doing good work.
Yeah.
But no, I do think term limits need to exist. It's a question of like, what does that look like? So I know Senate side, I think the terms are 6 years. So like, I think 3 terms is sufficient. I mean, if you are
Yeah.
there for 18 years, I think that's a solid amount of time that you've dedicated to your community and your people, and an opportunity for you to have got, if you are truly representing your community, you already know the leaders within your community that can step
Yeah.
into that role and take your position, and you can help usher into that role to run for office behind you. I think there's this level of like sometimes the egos in the room, that saying like, if I want something done right, I'll do it myself. I think that has really become a stronghold on our congressional government, specifically our federal government, and that a lot of people don't want to leave the space because they just don't think anyone else can do it. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think we have some incredible people that are coming up, that definitely deserve their opportunity to be in the room where the decisions are made and could make some really impactful decisions. So term limits is definitely something we need to be putting on the table. I think
So,
campaign finance reform is the bigger conversation, quite honestly, because
oh
I think
yeah.
that is what allows these individuals to get in that space and never leave.
Yeah. Or want to leave,
Right?
you know?
It's a
What
financial incentivization. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, 100%. With social media, sometimes our kids take the brunt. I know my son will say, or my daughter will say, "Untag me from that photo on Instagram," or whatever. Like, I look so bad, or I'm getting made fun of. Sometimes my kids will actually go through my TikTok account and block their friends from my account so that they ensure that they don't see what I'm talking about. Because a lot of stuff that I talk about, and I'm sure you as well, my younger kids don't understand. Like, why are you talking about abortion, mom? Like, what do you like? Are you having an abortion? Like, why would you talk about this? It's like, no, I'm not.
No,
However,
no. However,
and so I know with being on TikTok, how has that played out with your kids? And now, even in a bigger role running for office, like that is a lot of spotlight for one family to deal with. How do you deal with it with your children, and how do they deal with it as you being their mom? Because my son, when I got a mohawk right after I went through cancer treatment. I did not have chemo, just put that out there. And my son looked at me and he goes, "Why can't you be a normal mom?" Like,
What fun is
sweetheart,
that?
I'm never going to be a normal mom. Like,
Yeah,
it's just,
that's not fun.
but then
That's
someone
not
said,
fun.
"Oh my God, your hair looks like Pink, the rock star." And then he was okay with it. As long as I looked like someone famous, then he was okay with mom having a mohawk.
That's
But
hilarious.
I know, right? But so our kids do do deal with our nonsense, if you will.
Right.
How do you deal with them? And how do they deal with you being TikTok famous and famous for running for office, so to speak?
Well, I'm very grateful that by and large my kids are pretty proud of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's always this element like, oh my God, my mom's on TikTok. And like, there are friends that, like, I remember when my oldest, who's now getting ready to graduate from college, but when she was in high school, her friends would drive behind me and they'd be at a stoplight and they'd grab their phone, they'd take a picture, like, I'm behind the famous TikTok mom. And they text my daughter and it'd be a whole joke, like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I'm behind someone who's TikTok famous. And they'd send a picture of me in my car or whatever. And I'm like, y'all are stupid. But it was I think a lot of them make light of it. I think most of my daughter's friends, for the most part, are very like-minded and agree with a lot of the things that I'm saying online. They haven't made a point of surrounding themselves with those that have incredibly opposing views to my beliefs. And even those that have been relatively kind about, the fact that, like, I get it, your mom's doing what she thinks is right. And they really haven't expressed a big hardship from me being online. Initially, it was more of like a joke, like, this is embarrassing, and now it's more of a, like, just a way of life. I think it's come, it's one of those things they've just come to live with. Running for office, obviously, that also was impactful, but last time especially, I try to make them a part of the process. So they went and knocked doors with me a few times and
Wow.
got to kind of see, what that looks like. My middle daughter, who she went to events with me, like local events and fundraisers and things, and even went to a couple last year during the federal elections that were happening in the area. And then, my oldest, like, got to vote for me, which was really cool. That was her, it was her second
That's
election
so
ever.
cool.
And my middle daughter gets to vote for me this year. She turns 18 a month before the election. So, so there's this element that it's personal to them. I think, they always say, you can't have it all. That's true. You can't. There's definitely a struggle with life and work balance, because while campaigning is not something I'm getting paid for, it is work by every definition. I probably
Yeah.
dedicate at least 30 hours a week, if not more, just to the campaign. And then I work an additional 18 hours a week at a job. And then I'm also, a human that is trying to have some semblance of a life.
Yeah.
So, there's not a lot of time left. I'll give you a great example. This past weekend, every year we do a 24-hour annual run for cancer, because me and my husband are both avid runners. And this is something I got involved with in 2015 and I've done every year since. And we kind of plan our life around this weekend. We know what's happening. It is what it is. And so Saturday morning, Friday night, I had a gala at the local college with the Young Dems. So we go to that and we're there till 10. And knowing we have to get up at 3:45 in the morning the next day
No.
to load up and head to Hampton and set our tent up and get it set up for this day of running, walking, all of the things. So we get there, we get set up from 7 a.m. Until midnight. We are run walking our way to 50 miles. And then we basically packed up a little bit of our things, like the everything but our tents, loaded up, drove to Taco Bell. I had 1 a.m. Taco Bell. It was great. I loved it so much. But went home and took a shower, took what was by definition kind of a power nap, like 3 hours of sleep, got up, unloaded the car, and then my poor husband had to run up and get all our tents and come back home. But slept a little longer. And then I had a fundraiser for the campaign at 1 p.m. I had a phone
Wow.
call at a Zoom call with a really large fundraising organization that's in the state of Virginia that does a lot of good work for Democrats at 4 p.m. Um, and then yesterday I woke up and I was calling people to get donations. I had a Zoom call for an endorsement. I went to work. I did a podcast actually yesterday as well.
Mhm.
And then last night oh my gosh, like, this is how bad my brain is. What did I do last night? Babe, what did I do last night? Where did I go? I did something. Every day is something. Hold on. Now I'm going to be bothered if I can't remember.
Right?
Oh, I had so I did a political leadership program last year, and we went up to Richmond for for our little reception with our Sorensen group and alums. So that was my day. I didn't get home till 11 p.m. last night. And
Wow.
today is no different. Every
Yep.
day is kind of a whirlwind, and I literally have to like block off time for family things and things that are going on. And I'm very grateful that my husband shares that burden and picks up a lot of the stuff around with like the house and with the kids to kind of make it a little more feasible for me to do the things I have to do. But it is not a situation where you're going to have it all. There is some sacrifices you have to make. I'm going to prioritize, my daughter's graduation from college. I will be there all day. I'm like, do not bother me. We had spring
Right.
break, and I'm like, this is my week. Bye. I do not, So it's really about trying to figure out, where to fit all the things in, and not feel like you're completely drowning. I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
But it is a big ask. And I think, when you want to serve the community and be a truly a public servant, I don't think people quite understand the level of dedication and time that you're going to have to invest, especially in a
Yeah.
seat where I'm at, which is incredibly competitive, because this isn't one where just having a D or an R in front of your name is enough to get you to win, which a lot of districts have that privilege. And unfortunately, I think it creates an environment where the candidates aren't doing the good work. They're not engaging with their voters. They're not truly representing the people that they were, voted in by. And which is why I see low voter turnout in these districts that have are strong reds or strong blues. Where in my district, like we have voter engagement because of the fact that there is a real need it's a flip of a coin in how
Yeah.
close the race could be. I mean, I lost by 667 votes in 2023 in a
That's
seat that
amazing.
I was predicted to lose by 3,000 plus votes, which was nowhere near that number. So, like it's just the fact that there is room to flip the seat, but it takes me, making sure that people know I see them, I'm listening to them, and that I remain relevant in the district in a very variety of ways.
Yeah. There's so many people when I'm out and about, like some people know I'm on TikTok, some people don't in real life. And there's this idea that we're out here dancing on TikTok or, I don't even know what else. It's always the dancing, right? Do you think that you would be where you're at today without being on social media, without kind of getting this, I don't even know, like
Right.
grassroots teaching, self-worth, learning how to use your voice, learning the power that you have of like, wait a minute, people like me. Wait a minute, people like what I have to say. Wait a minute, I can actually do this. Wait a minute. Do you think that you'd be where you're at today doing what you're doing without social media, without TikTok, without that kind of learning landscape of social media?
No, no. I feel like I kind of came into my own in my 30s, really. Like, and I think most, honestly, I think most people, that is kind of a moment, a turning point for a lot of people to kind of really self-discover who they are and better understand, especially if they're trying to go on that kind of journey, better understand who they are and what they want out of life. And so in my early 30s, I feel like I did a lot of that, a lot of like introspection and like what does Jessica actually want? Because I was always a people pleaser growing up and always kind of worried about what everyone else thought of me or about me or what I could do for others. Like my love language is giving. Like that's just how I've always been. And so it was the first time in my life that I'd hate to say it, but I was kind of selfish and kind of recognizing like I need to be taking care of me and my mental health and worrying about me and putting my, wants and needs first. And that's a hard thing to do, I think. Um,
Especially being a
Social
mom.
media, especially being a mom, especially no, like, oh my gosh, it's incredibly hard when you're doing that. But I will say with social media, what started out is like, because I got on social media in 2020, I didn't get politically active until a year later in 2021. So I was active, I was engaging with political content, but I wasn't making political content. So I
Yeah.
was doing running vlogs, being silly on the internet. I was doing lip syncs and the little fun challenges with my husband or my kids. Like the utadas, outfit of the day. Like we were doing really fun content that was kind of biding my time and making me less insane while my children were trapped in the house with us day in and day out.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, it was building my confidence. It was like, oh, people think I'm funny, or
Yep.
oh, people think this is entertaining. And so it gave me a way to be seen, I think, in a real way that and there is unfortunately this um we can be a little self-deprecating sometimes on our own, and very critical of ourselves in a very
Yeah.
real way, I think, especially as women. Um, and so to have other people see value in me that maybe I wasn't even seeing was really, it
It's
impressed
weird.
upon my soul.
Yeah,
It's weird, but
it's weird,
it
but
was
it's
like,
nice.
it's nice. Yeah, it's nice
Yeah.
to feel validated, okay? That,
Yep.
let's be real.
Yeah.
Um, but what I noticed was when I started engaging with more political content, especially, and I saw these people, I'm like, God, these people are so brave. Like they're talking to the issues, they're drawing a line in the sand, they're
Yeah.
telling the truth. And I'm like, can I do that? Like, is that something I can do? And when January 6th happened, just side note, I had been infiltrating Parlor, which then transitioned into Telegram. I don't know how familiar you are with these very
Yeah.
alt-right kind of political or platforms that existed during that time. And so I told my husband and my coworkers, I'm like, something really bad's going to happen on January 6th. And many of them kind of looked at me like we have police. Like, what are you talking about? Like, no. Like I'm watching, I'm like reading the chats where they're saying we'll bring the rope. Like I'm seeing in real time them planning what transpired that day without a shadow of a doubt. And
Wow.
so I knew what was coming. And again, it's like I hadn't said anything. I didn't say anything. And then when it happened and like everything I had feared kind of was validated, I said, this is it. Like I can't be quiet anymore. This is my moment in time. It's either I say something now or I remain quiet and silent. And
Yeah.
so I made a very politically charged video that evening. I was so angry. I just remember like, if you support what happened today, unfollow me. We are
Yeah.
not the same people. Um,
And
and
that's
I and
scary
I
to do.
re
People don't realize, like, when you
yeah,
get a pretty decent following, to
yeah,
make that type of a statement can make or break your following. Like, people you don't
yeah,
know who's following you, you don't know, and it's scary to say stuff it's scary to come out about divisive issues in a very strong way because a lot of people make money off of it. Your ego comes from the follower count going up or down, and so to make that kind of a statement, I know it sounds dumb to people that aren't creators, but that is probably one of the scariest moments is
it
making that
is.
type of a statement as a creator. Just to put that out there
Absolutely.
if you don't
No,
get what
it really is. I mean, because you are drawing a line in the sand to people that
Yes.
have come to know you in a parasocial relationship online and feel like they're a part of your world and community. And
Yeah.
you're saying, well, if you feel this way, you're no longer a part of my community. And
Yeah.
it is very divisive. And I admit that, but that's where I was. And it
Yeah.
was like, I can't be fun and lighthearted anymore when I'm watching what's happening.
Yeah. People are dying
Um,
literally days after
right.
police officers were
Yes.
dying.
Yeah, it was so upsetting, and so, I don't like, I know some people know my journey, but, like, so my journey initially started out with me really exposing the in real time radicalization of people because of the combination of COVID and, January 6th and just all of these things that transpired after that, and the fact that there was some incredibly dark right-wing pipelines that were happening on these platforms that were just, I mean, oh my gosh, like creating this very cult mentality. It was so terrifying. And I was watching people that I knew in real life and cared about falling down these pipelines. And it's what drove me even further to like investigate, like, what are you consuming every day? So my content started out that way. And then it kind of, there was portions of it where I was pushing back against disinformation around COVID, disinformation around politics. Um, and even making like I would do those fabulous clapback videos to these very large right-wing platformer creators that were saying some of those outlandish thing and misrepresenting data or misrepresenting situations and trying to bring light to the truth. And you know but eventually that translated into me really focusing on policy issues and really focusing on like things that were being introduced at the congressional level and how they were going to impact people in a very real way. And there's this
Yeah.
like disconnect of like, how does policy become a law? And it became an education piece. And I tried to roll back my cynicism and my condescending tone that came out sometimes. I was a bit snarky. I always admit that.
It's
But it,
hard not to be emotional. It is. It's very
right.
difficult to not be bitey.
Yes, yes. In this climate, it is very hard to be not bitey. But I learned that when I took the tinfoil hat off
I
and
remember
took the
that.
time, yes, and took the time to push back about information with data points and
Yeah.
with a tone that didn't feel condescending, that didn't feel derogatory. I was getting better feedback from
Yeah.
people that were kind of sitting on the fence, trying to figure out which way to fall.
Yep.
And I was like, this is where the difference is going to be made, is me being able to facilitate these type of conversations. And um, it's funny because when I made that divisive video on January 6th, I had, I think, somewhere around 20 or 30,000 followers. Nothing like terribly significant. I mean, big for me, like it still felt really big for me. I remember
Yeah.
hitting 10,000 and being like, oh my gosh, but when I started speaking up and really changing the way I went, I immediately grew to 200,000 and then 300,000. And then, now I'm sitting just south or just north of 600,000. And so it says to me that um, being your true self, being authentically you, and being honest about where you stand on certain issues is not a bad thing. And there are people that want to hear those things. And it was nice to know that, it gives me the sense that I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes the way we feel, especially in our communities, because I don't know about you, but as someone who does have more progressive values, I didn't previously really wear my politics on my sleeve. I didn't walk out the door and people knew where I stood politically. That
Yeah.
was just not, I wasn't wearing merch. I wasn't like screaming at the top of my lungs. Like I wasn't wearing a pink vagina hat. It's just like, it wasn't something that I made a part of my personality or a part of my
Yeah.
everyday life. Um, so it's the fact that I think being a voice on social media has made people feel more emboldened to be authentic and honest about where they stand and push back. And I think right now, especially, that's so vital that we are a voice and we are a collective voice that says, you know what, we're here. We are not a minority. We do exist and we do have value. And our value right now needs to be in our vote each and every
Yeah.
time, as long as we have the right to vote. Um,
Yeah.
so, you know, yeah, so I think being on social media definitely led me down this path. It also gave me access to small dollar donors, which made me, the number one small dollar donor recipient in 2023's election, and gave me access to money that, I wouldn't have had otherwise. Like
Yeah.
I make $20,000 a year. Like I do not
Right.
have access to wealth. So it's just the fact that, this is not something that an everyday person could fiscally do without a
Yeah.
real grassroots movement.
I just think that, when looking out, if people are listening, if people are watching on all the platforms that we're on right now, and you are interested in running, like it doesn't matter if it's your school board, city council, start small, get your feet underneath you. Like you said, I'm going to run for Congress. Hold on a minute, and then you kind of dialed back and said, let's do this a little differently.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, my dad, he ran for judge. He was a judge. Now he's retired. Um, People don't realize that you have done 25 different events and engagements in the last 24 hours. That is not easy to be fresh every single time you walk into a room. So kudos to you for running 24 hours and then continuing to try, like, give Jess some grace. Like, honestly, like, people that are running for office, and it's not like poor me, it's just the reality of it. Putting yourself out there, putting your family out there, showing up fresh for everything that you do, being at literally everything. I have a sister-in-law who's a superintendent of a school. Like, she does her job, then she goes to the games, and the kids, like, being fresh all the time, that is not easy. So, like, honestly, thank you for what you're doing. And, when you see Jess out there, just give her some kudos. Where can everyone find you? Literally,
Yeah.
where can everyone find you? And if they want to donate to you, is that all on your website? And what is that?
Yes. So actually, if you go to my website, it's kind of a one-stop shop, which I think is super great.
Yeah.
But it's Jess, the number four, VA.com. So the donation link is on there. All of my social media links are on there. So I am not on Twitter because I escaped the hellscape pretty much at the beginning of this year. I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm still on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I do have a Facebook for my campaign. I have a Blue Sky, a Threads, all of the things. I'm obviously continue to make short form video content, about both national and, of course, Virginia politics. But yeah, I mean, all those places. I continue to try to be one of the number one small dollar donor recipients in the state. I think that's huge. I do not take
And
corporate
anyone can
money.
donate. Like, you don't have to be in Virginia to
Anyone can
donate.
donate.
Anyone.
No,
So if
so
you want
we
to see
have the
this woman in
wild, wild
Congress,
west of campaign.
yeah, if you want to see this woman in Washington making a difference for these types of political changes of, like, normal, rational, policy, this is the type of woman, this is the type of person that we need in Washington. This is a great way to donate to her to get her to this level and then where she can go in the future. So like, yeah, jess4va.com. Everyone.
Yes.
Everyone.
Yes. But yeah, and I say too, just really quickly, like, you have to, the only qualifying thing is you have to be a US citizen. There is no, sadly, there is no maximum on what you can donate. We are quite literally what we call the Wild Wild West of campaign finance in Virginia. It's kind of disappointing, which is something I hope to change at the state level when I get in there, as one of many things that I have on my to-do list. But yeah, so right now, if you live in the United States or even abroad and have a US citizenship, you can fully donate to the campaign, and I greatly appreciate it.
So good. So good. Well, thank you so much for taking your time away from your busy schedule. I know you have something literally right after this, because I was talking to your person last night and she's like, all right, I want to make sure and give you enough time. Can you start earlier? So, and thank you to everyone that's supporting Jess on her campaign out in Virginia and her family. Like, this is amazing. This is the woman that like I said, I started following years ago, and you've just, I don't want to say blossom, but maybe unearth the person that was there all along and just needed all of your TikTok following to remind you of how freaking amazing you are. And I hope that that's the reason I think all of us are kind of on TikTok, is to kind of find ourselves in some way, shape, or form out in the world. So thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the TikTok Famous Podcast with Meredith Willits. If you're loving the unfiltered stories and behind-the-scenes truths, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show. Until next time, let's get famous.